I'm Chris Chinchilla. Welcome to my podcast, an enthusiastic ramble through whatever has taken my interest the past week or so. Expect technology, games, history, travel, geekery, and as always, much, much more. Welcome everybody, welcome to another Chinchilla Squeaks with me, Chris Chinchilla. There's been a little bit of a break between episodes for reasons I will get to later. I have been busy the past week. I was at the We Are Developers event here in Berlin, interviewed a few great speakers. I'm going to feature one of those interviews in this episode, and then a few more over the coming weeks with some other interviews as well. This interview this week is with Ines Akrap, and we spoke a lot about the greening of the internet, a very, very valuable discussion at the moment, and her enthusiasm for the subject. I don't know if I captured even half of it, but she's incredibly enthusiastic and knowledgeable on the subject. It's a great interview, so please stick around. This episode is brought to you literally by Zencastr, an all-in-one platform for creating, sharing, and getting analytics and monetizing your podcast. I am using it to create this show, from getting the guests to join me, to distribution, to editing, to tagging, all sorts of things. If you are interested in finding out more, then head on over to zencastr.com/pricing and use my discount code Chinchilla Squeaks, all one word, for 30% off your first month on a paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences that I do for all your podcasting and content needs. It is time to share your story. All right then, let's get stuck in with links for the episode. There's quite a bit to catch you up on, and then an interview, and then some news from me. So let's jump right in with my links. Open UK just released a new survey, a new report on a survey about the state of open source in the UK. It brings nearly 14 billion to the UK economy. And many companies are thinking of increasing their investment in open source. So if you're interested in reading that full report, I'll put a link in the show notes, or you can just head over to openuk.uk and there should be a link pretty prominently to find it. And it's quite an interesting read. I'm not in the UK. I was born there. But the Amanda Brock over at that body has been doing some amazing work. She's been on the show a few times. And really getting the numbers. I'm going to reference a little bit later a podcast about science and politics, and I think she's kind of got something similar going on with technology and politics. Like she knows how to get the numbers, which is what people in power kind of care about to justify things, shall we say. Wikipedia is a great source of knowledge, and what do you think is one of the many things at the moment using that source of knowledge? Yes, large language models use Wikipedia quite a lot. And Wikimedia Foundation, the foundation behind Wikipedia, finds itself in an interesting place because this is kind of what they want, spreading, disseminating information around the globe. But what will happen to them if people... I think this is the issue that's coming up with a lot of these chat-style AI bots, is that people don't go to the website necessarily anymore to consume that information. So Wikipedia isn't relying on advertising, but it's relying on sponsorships. So how do they maintain their income stream in this situation? And likewise, how does Wikipedia prevent itself, or protect itself more accurately, from being a victim of said bots also then updating all the content? So you get this this phenomenon that's been mentioned a few times where you have basically bots feeding bots. And we already have seen problems in the past of Wikipedia pages referencing Wikipedia pages as a canonical source of truth, which is a bad thing and actually against their terms of use. So how do they protect themselves against that wider problem? Well, this is a post from Selena Deckelman over on Medium talking about the foundation's plans for the future, what they're looking into, what they're thinking of doing, how they're looking to exist in this new world. And I found it quite interesting to get from the source itself cited what the Wikimedia Foundation is going to be attempting to do moving forward. So if you wonder how a source of knowledge that is very community-minded is thinking, then head on over to Medium and take a look. On the subject of the internet being a source of truth or not, this is an article on The Atlantic from Helen Lewis about the wrath of Goodreads. Goodreads is a predominantly user-generated content site where people rate and share books they are reading, and it's now owned by Amazon. And it's one of these places that could really make or break a book when people are looking for recommendations, when people are looking whether they will like something. User-generated reviews have become such a commonplace phenomenon all over the internet. And with so many sites having the potential to really cause problems or positives for so many people. And Goodreads is one example of this because obviously I would imagine that Goodreads makes money from affiliate links, and especially as it's now owned by Amazon, directing people to buy books from Amazon. But it's not directly connected to a service, not like Airbnb or something where they want you to definitely rent a place that you like the look of. And there have been many cases recently of books being broken by bad reviews, and that in itself is not bad if a book is bad. But the problem here is these are books that haven't even been released yet. And you see this on other sites too. Board Game Geek is another example, probably less well known, where people will review something as 1 star just based on the topic or the writer or an interview they heard, but haven't actually read the book. And there are many examples in this article about how this has happened and how almost impossible it is for an author to get back from this. And when you bear in mind that authors put in so much time and effort to get a book out and then to have it kind of destroyed before it's even been released by a bunch of people who haven't even read it is, I would imagine, very disheartening. And the article lists a whole bunch of times when this has happened, and you can kind of start to imagine some of the topics. It goes everything from people misinterpreting what a topic will be and taking offense to it, to a lot of virtue signaling around topics and trying to quote unquote cancel people, when often the book is actually kind of dealing with that in itself. This is not an uncommon problem. But as I now start to put out some of my books, more of that later, I really worry about what could happen in these places. And many authors do read their own reviews, and there's a little bit of me that's wondering whether just not even to bother. And, how do you get people to give you good feedback without being dodgy or unethical, I suppose. But have a look and think twice next time you just give a bad review based on, based on an uninformed opinion. I don't know. I'm hoping none of you would do that, but let me know. And I know there's other alternatives to Goodreads too that try to be a little better. I don't know if they would. They probably have the same problem, but just being less popular maybe mean that you get less people doing this kind of activity. Let me know if you have any thoughts on this or anything I've shared so far at chrischinchilla.com/contact. Next, more of a sort of hardware tech industry news, not something I would normally cover, but it was of particular interest to me. This is from Brian Heater over on TechCrunch. Loupedeck has been acquired by Logitech. What is Loupedeck? Well, there's Loupedeck and there's Stream Deck, and they're both devices. I kind of call them dumb devices, and I don't mean that in a bad way. They're basically just a series of knobs, dials, buttons, sliders that you can configure to do all sorts of things, but they're generally optimized for video production, audio production, streaming, a whole bunch of things. I am a big fan of Stream Decks. I have a couple of them. And I'm really getting into customizing them now. I'm actually putting together some articles on that in the very near future. And Loupedeck is another one. Loupedeck is a newer company. I think it's a Finnish company. They also have more like dials, kind of jog wheels and things like that aimed at video creators. I opted for the Stream Deck just because it has a better ecosystem right now. Not a perfect ecosystem, but a bigger one. Stream Deck was acquired by Elgato a few years ago, who also make a lot of microphones, cameras, streaming, and video gear. And now with Loopdeck being acquired by Logitech, you kind of see where this is going. You have these two companies that basically now have a portfolio of media creation tools. And I guess that still means there's competition. There are other providers out there. I saw a few at a fair in Berlin earlier in the year, but they're the main ones. What are your feelings? Have you tried either of those? I think my concern is, will they become too tied to the other hardware? I haven't found that with Stream Deck yet. It does have a few plugins that are optimized for use with other Elgato hardware, microphones, the lights, things like that. But that doesn't actually mean you can't control them with other ways. It just is more of a case that those devices are controllable in the first place, like Elgato's ring lights, things like that. So I have new ear lights. I can't control them from a Loopdeck or a Stream Deck. And it's nothing to do with a lock-in. It's the fact that they're just not controllable lights without just using the little infrared remotes. So, yeah. So I'm not sure if there'll be vendor lock-in, but it's interesting to see that you're getting these ecosystems forming around the whole creator world, the whole creator influencer market, and that it's becoming a big enough market to warrant even doing this now. A couple of trips down memory lane coming now. This first one is from Michael Coxcodon on Medium about creating a website like it's 1999. And I actually started developing websites in 1998, so I remember all this well. The way that JavaScript and CSS were nothing but a twinkle in the creator's eyes. I think it was HTML3 at the time. We used frame sets. We used tables aplenty. We used front page. We used Dreamweaver. We got frustrated with Internet Explorer, and we made sure all our pages were optimized for dial-up connections, and those dial-up connections and the shrieks of pain emitting from your phone lines and devices. Oh, I remember them. I don't think I remember them fondly, but I remember them. So if you're about the same age as me and probably as Michael, and you feel like a trip down memory lane of how simple things used to be, then take a read. And he also details how possible it is to actually create sites like this still, kinda. And in a similar vein, from a similar era for sure, this is from Rest of World about the world's remaining internet cafes. And the reason I put this in, it's kind of interesting. I was recently in Glasgow. I attended a meetup, and it was in a cafe that looked a lot like, and I think it was an old school internet cafe. They even had shared computers. No one was really using them. I don't know how old these computers were. I don't know if anyone even used them anymore, because most people just have their own laptops and tablets now. And as the cafe blared out 90s new metal, I was sitting there thinking, what era have I fallen into? And then I saw this article, and yes, I do remember, I think in London especially, it was Easy Cafe. Yes, run by the same company that is behind EasyJet. And there were many others where we used to log in, clear your history, dodgy USB sticks to get files, printing. We'd spend a fair bit of time in them. And of course, they are very much a dying breed. Almost only a few handfuls or a few dozen left in the world. Many switch to being LAN cafes, and you do still see some of those. But as pure internet cafes, they're largely gone. And what happened to the companies behind them? What happened to the people who still use them? I think libraries would probably be the main thing that replaced them, which is not really mentioned in the article, because that's probably where I do see most people using public computers to browse the internet is libraries, neighborhood centers, that kind of thing. But like Michael's article, if you're of a particular vintage and remember them well, then you can read their eulogy. Now I'm going to recommend a podcast episode, one that doesn't really need much promotion. If only they'd promote me, maybe get somewhere near their listener base. This is from the Rest is Politics people. They have a leading podcast where they interview leaders in their field. And this episode is with Paul Nurse, and he speaks about science and politics and how to kind of separate the two, how to justify science to politicians. And he does it in a very pragmatic way because he doesn't come from a privileged background. He sort of built himself up into his position. And it was just such a nice, blunt, unguarded interview about the perils of science and politics and how the two should and shouldn't and how they don't mix. So I recommend taking a listen to that and tell them I sent you. That'd be nice. Thank you very much. 2 more for you. This was over on Chill Subs Substack. A quite in-depth analysis of how literary journals fund themselves. Literary journals may be something that's lost on many of you. They're a world I used to exist in, and now I am starting to pitch short stories to publications again. I'm starting to rediscover them and where they're up to now. You still get a lot of print ones. Most of them are all digital, but you find these strange little corners of the internet with these literary journals that have these very particular submission guidelines that you never truly understand. And for the likes of me who write fairly heavy genre fiction, I don't always get included in them because it's not the kind of thing they want. But I always kind of wondered how they fund themselves, because a lot of them ask you to pay to submit and you wonder where that money goes. They obviously also sell copies. And this article really goes into depth, drilling down into the numbers of magazines they found to find out how they fund themselves and how many are really independent and pay people. And long story short, spoiler, it may not surprise you, there's really not many. But how many and is an interesting journey to read. So I recommend you go through and read it and see really how this world breaks down when it comes to cold hard numbers. And I don't know if it really helps someone like me, but it makes me feel a little better about myself maybe, just realizing that so many of these publications are not the big golden gatekeepers that they may the impression they may give. But it also makes me wonder if there's really a better idea for this. I know that you see Substack and Medium and various other places trying to sort of replicate this journal model. And I don't know how successful they are. But yeah, independent publishing is hard, especially independent literary publishing. And this article really just proves how hard it is. And finally, this is an article from Alex Lawson in The Guardian about electric planes. This is EcoJet, launched by a green tycoon. We have electric cars. Electric cars are fairly well established. What about electric planes, those gas-guzzling, carbon-emitting planes? And this is a very appropriate episode to feature this. I talk about this with Ines in the interview that is forthcoming. Where do we begin with this? And EcoJet is trying to make it a little more affordable. It's still only really basically a large private jet. So not many people, probably still relatively unaffordable and relatively short range, but people have to push and push at the boundaries, don't they, to get to the next stage. And I really think that is something we're going to have to solve, electric planes. They're still waiting full approval and full clearance to run some routes, but I'm interested to see how it goes. And I think it's mostly in the UK right now. And yeah, I really look forward to kind of seeing options like this available for booking as someone like me, not someone who you have to go and hire a private jet company, but to actually just go onto Skyscanner or something like that and actually find this offered as an option for a flight I can do for a significant journey. Not just sort of 100 kilometers or whatever it may be, but actually, from one end of the country to the other or something like that. And I really look forward to that time. So keep an eye out for EcoJet and let's hope they will be one of those contenders. Next is my interview with Ines Akrap, where we talk about greening web design, greening the internet, making the internet more sustainable. Great interview. Enjoy, and I'll see you back afterwards. So Ines, you gave a talk yesterday. There's been a few talks on green computing, sustainable development, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. What was the title of yours, just to go into?
Mm-hmm. So the title of my talk was Reducing the Carbon Footprint of Your Website.
Okay. And before we go into details, I think there's a lot we could go to there. What interested you in that topic in the first place, and why?
So basically, as I said in my talk, a bit like my origin story when it comes to topic comes from web performance. I come from a bit of a background. So I have a master's degree in telecommunications. I started working as a front-end developer, and I was always interested in this part of networking and optimization. So I was always kind of going towards this web performance part of our front end. Of course, front end being huge that it is, with so many topics that to kind of cover. And this is something I try to specialize in bit by bit. And then actually at end of 2020, there was the Google Chrome Developer Summit. And there was one talk from Jason Miller. And he was talking about JavaScript and about this sheer unused JavaScript that's just there on the web. Again, unused. That was the kind of main point. And he calculated the amount, of course, approximation, how much that is, and he recalculated it to carbon emissions. Yeah. So this was the first time I heard that, it was the first time I've seen this. And he added like the amount of trees to offset this. And again, like my mind was a bit blown because I was like, oh, it's logical, but I never thought about it. It's just, to be honest, I'm not the big activist when it comes to the topic, but I do my small contributions where I can. So when I saw that this is even a thing, I started looking into the topic, and I saw that there is this huge overlap with web performance. So generally optimizations that you do for one apply mostly to another one as well. And I realized I was already doing quite some without even being aware, and that like being aware about it, I can do even more. So this is kind of how it all started.
And it's a big topic because we can go so many different ways here. Let's maybe, I sort of feel like I've been around web development long enough that I remember when you had to be performant because no one had good internet.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point we stopped caring about that because most people, it's actually not strictly true that all people in the world still have very slow, unstable connections. But there came a certain point where it seemed we stopped caring about performance, especially in web applications, and we now all know the joke of, your battery's dying, blame Chrome. This kind of thing. It became almost a joke, but still no one really seemed to care so much. And it's now come back as part of this. What do you think, ignoring maybe the environmental stuff, but what do you think, maybe that is the reason, what do you think changed that made people stop caring, and what do you think has changed to make people start caring?
Well, I think there's what I was also touching upon in my talk yesterday was the paradox of how technology keeps improving, and of course efficiency keeps decreasing, as you were just saying, because we trust in technology so much. And usually, so I've looked at this, of course, this is the topic of the optimization. So I looked at it from pure web performance perspective for years, and trying to convince people to care about web performance was generally very hard, because most of developers, most of product owners, designers are power users. We have this, we live in our small tech bubble with our fast internet, with our super brand new computers and all that. And this is the issue. I guess this is the issue that a lot of times, there's we can touch on the topic of accessibility, of course, when it comes similar to this, but just staying on web performance. This was the part for me that was always, I just couldn't understand how people don't understand. It was like, because there was always, we had this when we would be talking about web performance. One of my colleagues would always say, just open Amazon and see what's the most sold device. It's not the newest iPhone. It's like the mid-range €100, I don't know, maybe Motorola, that it's also for example, in web page tests, you have Motorola Moto as some kind of testing benchmark. So I was like, this is somewhere maybe around the, let's say, average device. The newest iPhone is not the average device. The newest Samsung is not an average device. And yet we focus on those. And yet we focus on these, fast networks. And to be honest, I kind of also went to the topic because I'm a person that doesn't wait. I'm a huge rage clicker. So it's if I want to read something, if I want to consume content and I cannot get it, I do get quite frustrated. So I wanted to fix the problem for myself as much as for everyone else out there, because, for example, one of the things I actually discussed with one colleague a few days ago, it was but don't everyone have a good internet? And I was did you rode the metro recently? You don't have it all the time, This is the thing. I just came here with the train, Deutsche Bahn, and it was Yeah.
It's actually got better.
It got better, but you know what I love about it? Testing performance. So you just ride, you have this like 4-hour ride when I'm just like opening a bunch of websites. I was like, let's see how you perform in Deutsche Bahn. You know, so it's basically just this part with accessibility as well that we say none of us is always able. So we can be temporarily disabled because of something we have, and same here is like, we're not fully power users all the time. And I have a feeling that, again, the people developing stuff in general, again, not just developers, everyone in the ecosystem that keeps forgetting a bit this part that, we just want to deliver best user experience. And a lot of times I have a feeling that we are not doing this anymore.
Yeah, let's come, because you're right, it does feed a lot into the performance. And often when you're measuring carbon impact, you're kind of measuring performance metrics and then converting it to something that makes more sense. But I think it's interesting to start to extrapolate the problem. You looked yesterday at, JavaScript is definitely one of them, but you also looked at images and the video player. I found it very interesting where you said how many people watched the video. Very few people have. And I think those embedded YouTube things it can be quite consuming.
Yeah.
But the images is the one I'd like to focus on because there was some on there that were way bigger than others. People do have a tendency, especially with modern frameworks, just to kind of like, the framework optimized.
Yeah.
Which is sometimes true. But you add them all up. And you said there was one page, I can't remember which one, that was 19 megabytes, which...
That was a homepage. So what I did, exactly. So what I did in the talk yesterday is I analyzed the We Are Developers World Congress page, and I did that page because everyone in the audience was the user. Yeah. So first and foremost, I wanted to do a small bit of a user research that you just mentioned with the video. And then again, I also kind of wanted to try to put everyone in the audience in a user perspective, because usually they're on the other side of the screen. They're the ones creating these experiences. I was like, this was something that was created for you. So how did you like it? Yeah. So that was kind of what I wanted to do.
That's one page, of course.
That's one page.
19 megabytes.
0.7. 19.7 it was.
20.
It's 20, yeah.
So I think the interesting thing here is you take that, and let's say, I think they're saying there's 15,000 attendees here.
Yeah.
So let's say, this is probably low. Yeah. Let's say everyone looked at it twice. So
I lost count, to be honest, for me personally. Yeah.
Views, say for that one page, times that by 20 megabytes.
Yeah.
But this is where it starts to, you think, 20 megabytes isn't that big these days. That's a problem in itself.
Oh, yeah.
But then you multiply, and you realize that that's happening on everybody's device. We've ignored the thing that's serving it.
Yeah.
Well, of course, that's a whole other part of the equation. And then you suddenly realize that starts to become a much bigger thing. I think when I did a talk last year on the sort of server-side stuff, I think we worked out that one very simple example I made is equivalent to one flight from London to New York.
Yeah.
Which, again, doesn't seem like a lot, but then you multiply. And I think the statistic I remember was that the entire kind of technology industry is about equivalent to the airline industry. But I think that was but this is also it's a lot more hidden.
It depends, like current numbers are like what I was also showing yesterday. So currently aviation, it's 2% and internet is 4%. Okay. So it keeps increasing. Like actually a colleague from a green,
yeah,
exactly. That's the thing. Like, what do you do? What is aviation? How, what do we take it to? Exactly. Like, do we count for like those like little cars driving around the airports, or we don't? Like, what do we do? Exactly. So this is, it's a bit of it's tricky to calculate it, but there is like internet definitely surpassed the aviation. Which,
but I think the interesting thing is that with aviation, there's obviously some very obvious things you can fix, but it's a lot harder. With technology, it's kind of easier for us to fix in some respects. So, based on your talk, what would be, say, the three things you think? Let's not say the easiest thing to do. Let's say the most impactful that people can do.
So. Let's actually go on the website. So I was analyzing again, like I had like those few reasons that I already mentioned to take this website. And to be honest, this kind of became a very much a habit. Like I had this even before with web performance. I would just check every single page I go to for web performance. And then I kind of do it as well, especially for the pages I visit a lot. And I was like, let's see how much carbon do you emit. So I kind of like, I do that. So I kind of did that with the conference page when I even got accepted to talk at it. And later the whole idea to use it for the talk came. But basically on this, what we would see is assets. So there are so many things, and well, let's actually go with the main impact. There's many things contributing to this. However, what I already mentioned, the problem is not the things we use. The problem is the things we don't use. And this is the part you said, like aviation is quite hard. We know where to fix, but we need more technology. We need innovation. No, here we don't. We need deletion. This is what we need here, no? Because it's basically, so one of the things I mentioned actually first was sheer amount of fonts. And a quick analysis I did was that most of these are not used. I'm not sure if they're even aware, because most of the times people are just not aware what it's there, especially with these. I work in consulting, for quite some years. I've worked on many different, quite large client projects as a developer, of course, for years, and now as a web performance consultant. And a lot of times, people just don't know what is there. People don't want to touch anything, not to break it. No, like, because if I delete this, who knows which, what am I doing? What am I completely pulling apart? And this is unfortunately where the issue lies now. So we are serving, as Jason was saying a few years back in his talk, so much things that are not used. So this is basically what will make the most impact. Try to start optimizing, analyze what is actually not being used, and try to get rid of this. No, like your closet in the end of the day, entering your closet, saying, okay, this fits, this doesn't fit, So basically something like this with your website, going inside and see the code coverage, for example, for JavaScript and CSS. And then of course going towards images to see images are actually a very big issue, because people usually say, of course, the image says 1,000 words, and all that. But also one concept that comes from accessibility is this decorative images. Yeah. And screen readers ignore them. Why? Because they're just not relevant a lot of times for the users. No, they don't bring value. They don't bring anything other than, let's say, visual aspect. No?
Just ask one thing before I forget on that.
Sure.
Is there any benefit to replacing image files with things like SVGs or vector images?
Absolutely. So this is something, for example, that I'm looking into with a client I'm currently working, what we can do in order, for example, with PNGs. Yeah. So we have so many of those PNGs, and most of them, because if you need a transparency, why would you use a PNG? It's usually because of transparency, and those things can most probably be done with SVGs. Mm-hmm. And I would say, we are in the phase of this, let's say, optimization and replacement. However, we would definitely like to come in a phase where this is accounted for from the start. No, so when the product owner is making the decisions, when the designers, UX designers are designing interaction, UI designers is designing, the interface, they take this into consideration. So they're like, you know what? I want to put here something like needs transparency. Let's go for SVG because, it's, more performant. It's more lightweight at the end of the day. What we're talking here, better for the environment,
Do you wonder if, performance impact has some business value you can justify because people get to it quicker, etc., etc. There's a lot of things you already talked about, kind of wastage. There's obviously a lot of things that people shove in to web pages that the user doesn't care about, but the business does. Yeah. Tracking, and obviously they have other negatives.
Oh yeah. Don't get me started on
that. But we do know, unfortunately, that for many things to really force change, there sometimes has to be regulation. Yeah. We've seen some regulation on accessibility and tracking and things like that, especially in Europe and some other countries. Do you wonder if there will ever be any kind of mandated green, whatever regulation for web pages, that they have to match a certain value somehow, and it has calculated settings. It really depends on the complexity of it. But do you think there'll be anything? Have you heard any rumors even or discussions of that?
Yeah, I do. So yeah, it's definitely there's things going on around the topic. So actually, some of the community members, the community leaders, I would say, did have a talk with European Parliament recently. So there is many things being, because as you said, regulations are unfortunately the only thing that make people listen. I did way back, I think 4 years ago, I was doing a talk on a meetup about importance of accessibility in web performance. So it was a 30-minute talk. I explained, why we should do that. First question from now I'm going to be terrible and say like person in a suit. It was, why would we do that? And I was like, but I just spent the 30 minutes saying, why would we do it? But he's like, but it does not convince me very much. And I was like, but why doesn't? We're talking user experience. What we are doing here should be for the user. We should be putting users first. We want to kind of,
You're hitting some of my buttons here. We'll come back in a minute.
Okay. In a good or in a bad way?
From your perspective, I don't know.
Okay. And basically, we continued this, to be honest, a bit useless back and forth until I was like, well, because it's about to become a regulation, you're going to be penalized because you don't do it. And then he sat down. He was like, okay. So, it was, for me I come from this perspective where I'm very passionate about these topics. I want to do it. I want to make internet a better place, a greener place. And then when you have to explain it to someone whose, let's say, motives behind it are different, it's sometimes very hard for me to do that.
Yeah, this is funny because it hits one of my personal pet peeves at the moment, which actually does cross over with user first, not business first, and environmental impact. I really dislike it with so many people now. So we've created a native application, and it's electronics, etc. It's just a web application in a wrapper, and they're always completely unoptimized for the system you're using, so they're not focused on the best for you, and they're usually very resource intensive.
So, imagine.
Well, basically a web browser and an application. There's this funny sort of thing where I do sort of feel a little bit like some development recently has become very much business first, not user first. I'm not going to be naive enough to say it has ever been any different. I think there's just more tools that let people get away with it now. And it comes back to where we started this conversation, where I think the reason we got to this place in the first place, I feel the reason we got to this place in the first place, is that it became so easy just to keep throwing resources at things. Our computers can cope with it, internet can cope with it, cloud service can cope with it, chuck another AWS instance at it, it doesn't matter. And now we've got to the point, especially with budgets being cut in tech, I think all these things are actually costing us in various ways. Imagine to reduce them all.
Because it kind of scales, when I talk about this as well, about these optimizations, and especially the one thing that we also love to talk when it comes to sustainable web itself is the content, is the sheer amount of content out there. So as I mentioned yesterday in the talk, it's a very vertical topic, and putting all the blame when it comes to performance and as well, hopefully now more and more the topic of sustainable web to the developers is not fair, because they can do so much. You are the one, especially in the big projects. Again, I worked as a front-end developer for many years in different projects, and you're the one doing the implementation. So you are not the one who gets to control which features is being built. No, the user research we did yesterday, for example, with this video. So what I was saying, that there is this pattern, no import or interaction, that you can just not load all the integrations, but put this facade. And for example, this is something that the developer can decide to implement it in that way. However, removing video completely if no one is using it, which yesterday with the user research we saw that just few people actually clicked on this video. So again, is it relevant, not relevant? That's for someone else to decide, but not the developer. So this is something that you know what I mean? So it's a topic that has to go completely across, and these optimizations. So a lot of times when we talk about it, we talk about as well the content, because as well, so many times I've seen, developers doing, let's say, front end. So you spend weeks and weeks optimizing front end builds, tree shakings. What do you do here? What there? and you save, let's say 20, 30, 40K. And then someone comes with the 5 megabytes of image and we can all just pack our bags and go home because what are we even doing this? So, it's just this kind of, and then of course the amount of assets as images, videos and content itself, so many outdated things out there that just make more and more, well, they require more and more space. And this is something I also say, like, of course, you need data center to store all this. So we put data centers as these bad guys, because there are so many, they're building new data centers, but why are they doing this?
Yeah.
Because we want it. We are demanding more data centers to store all of our new things and old things and all that. So it's not, I guess, their fault as much as it's like demand as well, to grow this.
Yeah. I think this is where the airline internet comparison is also different because we probably do know when we go to the airport, we go on a plane, we smell the petrol, we see all the trash. Like, I know this isn't great, but whatever. We just have this pane of glass and we press the buttons and really forget everything past that. It's quite transparent. Actually, this might lead a little bit into. I have sort of two parts to this question from your perspective. You spoke yesterday. There's obviously people publishing books. There's some foundations. There's some tools and frameworks for helping you make assessments and things like that. But I was interested to know, when we look at things like Chrome DevTools or all the browsers have their own DevTools. In addition to just the general performance tools that are already there, has anyone started adding any developer-focused carbon impact tools to those dev tools yet? Or is that something that isn't quite there? You're just relying on the other tools that just help you make those calculations?
I'm not sure of what part, do you mean?
So you can look at the performance tools in Chrome DevTools. I'm saying tools a lot.
Okay, so for Lighthouse, no situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there anything that kind of less abstractly just says this JavaScript file has, causes 10 grams of...
Okay.
Or is it still just making those abstractions between the two at the moment?
Yeah, it's a bit like, again, so the calculation of it, what I was explaining the model yesterday and how this is being calculated, again, it's a very rough thing. Yeah. So the thing is it comes from a different researches done on the university and all that. So this was kind of being modeled how this energy profile of the website would look like. And then, of course, with the grid intensity, how do we actually put it to the, CO2 emissions. So basically one thing that I actually had to delete the slide because it was just making me pass my 30-minute mark was the Firefox. So Firefox DevTools actually have this energy profile that you can analyze, the energy of the processes, and it
like you have on.
Exactly. So in the browser as well, you can analyze the processes, and actually it depends. The granularity depends on the machine you have.
Yeah.
So I think that they say that the best one, that the most granularity you actually get with the M1, the MacBook, and then Linux as well. Some systems are a bit less granular there. And actually, one of the creators of the tool, the library that does the calculation, the CO2JS is the library, and one of the creators. So for Shadi Rani, he actually did a contribution to Firefox to do the calculation of the energy to the CO2.
Yeah.
So if you open this energy profile on the Firefox, you can see this calculation, and it's super exciting. I love this, and I haven't had actually the opportunity yet to put it into action properly to kind of play more with it, but it's something I would definitely like to explore further.
Thinking about it, actually, there may be options presented to end users of, there's options for using this website, and this one saves carbon but costs you more, whatever it may be. This one, it's like when you carbon offset on a flight or something like that. That there's potentially tips or options for using a website more sustainably, and this may help people understand. I didn't even think about that as a fact. I think there's people us in the industry talking about it,
Mm-hmm.
but I wonder how many actual users of these services even know it's a potential problem. Do you think there's any strategies there for just even telling end users that this is actually something to even be concerned about?
Yeah, so this is, I think, like, for example, one of the reasons I do go to conferences and talk about it, one of the reasons I'm here with you today as well, is because I think this is, again, something that people are not aware of. I was not aware of it, until a few years back. And again, it just kind of blew my mind when I realized that this is even a thing. So, one way as well to kind of, there's, I think, many ways to kind of steer, well, at least notify the user that this is even a thing. So there is some of the websites out there that are care about the topic. So there is to calculate it. So you can put the URL of your website in many different tools and calculate it. And one of it, I would say two most popular ones are EcoGrader and Website Carbon. Okay. And Website Carbon actually has the badge that you can integrate into your website, and it shows how much carbon your website emits. So this is something cool that you can do, for example, to show users as well. What I was saying yesterday, you can show for example, a badge if your website is green hosted, because with this, you can just steer the user as well, like, oh, what this even is, and then make them search into the topic, I would say. So I think this is one of this kind of, let's say, the part just of creating awareness. However, there is also one part I very much love to talk about. And I also had to drop it from yesterday's presentation, and this is progressive design.
Yeah.
So this is taking users' choices into consideration when designing and when serving the websites. So the same amazing developer I mentioned before for Shadi Irani. So he created this kind of proof of concept of carbon aware website where he actually uses, there is an API for the carbon intensity. So electricity maps, .com, they have this. You can see the map of how clean or dirty your energy is at not really lifetime, real time, depending actually on the provider. But there is an open API, CO2 Signal is called. Yeah. And with this one, you can check, depending on the location of the user, how clean or dirty their energy is, let's say at this point, that day maybe. So what he did is he actually used this on the Edge network to check for of course, the cleanness of the energy. And then depending on this parameter, he serves different version of the website to the user. So if your grid is cleaner, then you get a bit more features. If it's, let's say, dirtier, you get, let's say, a more lightweight website. And of course, you get notified that this is a lightweight website, and an option to turn on the full blown, because of course, then it kind of gives this option to you.
It's based on IP address, I guess.
Yeah. And then there is also, I think, few websites out there that there is basically a menu up there, like you can switch between light and dark mode, which is also one of the strategies. So depending on, for example, technology actually. So in case of OLED devices, like designing in dark mode can save up to 30% of energy as well, like having something darker. But again, that's a very, very small impact.
No, I've heard this. I've been late convert to dark mode. I don't really like it, but I kind of was convinced. But I think it would be interesting to actually measure it and see how much, how this is the whole complexity. You have things like Activity Monitor or macOS stuff, but it's not very good it's very good at kind of instantaneous energy impact, but not so good at like monitoring over time. I'm sure there's some kind of command line tool I can find. Okay.
No, but yeah, that's basically so this was for me like a very cool thing when I saw this, because generally it's not only that. So I've been in a topic as well for a few years, and we wanted as well to include, even before this carbon aware situation, we wanted to include some other parameters, because on the level of the browser, you can check for a few things such as data saving mode, such as battery saving mode, all that. So basically,
give you a lot of things to make.
Yeah, and like when you check this, so we created a small library a few years back, like with few colleagues of mine. It's open source, of course, and it's called ProgUX. And again, it just kind of checks.
Say that again?
Prog UX, like progressive UX. So it's a very small library, and it basically what it does, it gives you it checks these information for you, and then it puts the classes on the body, and it puts you in the local storage, this data, so you can consume it in the JavaScript. And there is a dev mode that actually offers you a panel to toggle between, so you are like, it's easier for developers to change between these modes.
Yeah.
So this is the biggest part of it. But basically, again, the whole point behind is to help developers design and develop for this. Taking users' preferences into consideration. Because again, it's not the same if your phone is dying or not, what you want to see. It's not the same what type of mobile phone plan, like if you're on a Wi-Fi or if you're actually in your phone plan that could be very expensive in some countries.
Yeah.
Again, tech bubble. we tend to forget that it's
Phone plans are quite expensive in Germany for you.
Exactly. And then, and then some stuff as well, which is, so I consider this very, very important, which is reduce motion.
Yeah.
Because some of the animations can trigger serious medical condition in people. And like, this is not being taken into account for. So, all of these things basically just designing in a way to take these, if someone like turned on the reduced motion, why are we not respecting this?
Yeah.
This is kind of the question that's behind it.
I've even encountered sites that actually because this is something developers actually like, and this is the problem with all these conversations, like accessibility.
Yeah.
We'll hear a lot of developers saying, "Oh, you're just giving me more stuff to do." I don't like that. But if we talk about light and dark mode, which is something they do like, is I have encountered so many websites that don't actually implement that properly. They just have a toggle, but they don't respect the system settings. It's like, oh, but it works. Like, it doesn't work. I am looking at, if I change theme on my device, the site should change.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
It probably gets stored somewhere, It gets stored somewhere,
Exactly. So, we already see something that people actually generally like because it's something they like and it's not being
So cache busting not done right.
Check the other stuff. Anyway, so loads of things to think about personally. I hope anyone who's listened to this as well. And where would you recommend people start? If we've convinced them in this conversation they would like to try some of these ideas. We've given a lot of things that we've gone.
Yeah.
But where would be like the first stop resource for people to go and know where to continue the journey from?
Okay, so if you want to know more about sustainable web, so just how to design more sustainably, because there is different, let's say, wording about the topic. And for example, yesterday my talk was reducing the carbon footprint of your website. So what I was focusing on is on reducing the carbon footprint of your website. Then also, for example, the talk I given a few weeks back at Linux Foundation Energy Summit was about was designing energy efficient websites. So again,
I think I watched that talk. I didn't come because it was too expensive. I don't really like Paris, but I think I watched the talk.
I was like me and my colleague that gave the talk with me. We were shocked that we got into like this whole thing because
I think I actually have the photo. So.
So basically, again, we are definitely concentrated, depending, what the audience is, depending this is the part, because, like the hardest part of the yesterday talk for me was to keep it 30 minutes because I had so many things to say about the topic that like just putting it into these 30 minutes, just covering such a small portion of it was very hard. And sustainable web design, like the definition of sustainable web design is designing in a way that puts people and planet first.
Yeah.
So this is something. So if you're interested in this, sustainablewebdesign.com is the best way to start.
No. Interesting people.
Exactly. So strategies, it's a very good place to start. It has also by all these strategies for design are sorted by role as well. So you can check it if you're a developer or a designer or a product owner. So you can check which ones apply to you. So this is, I would say, the best place to start when it comes to just learning about the topic. And then, of course, there is, let's say, a lot of developers, tech people love to, learn by doing. So then I would suggest going to EcoGrader. It's a great website that basically its creator, Tim Frick, what he said actually a few days ago, is that he created it because that was the feature missing in a lighthouse. So he kind of would really like to have this score in the lighthouse about like eco part of the website. So he created EcoGrader in order to kind of, let's say, bridge this gap that does not exist in the lighthouse. So this is a great place to start because it will give you as well page weights, the carbon calculation, and it will give you already kind of, it will analyze it for you and tell you where to go, oh, your images are too big or you have too many fonts. It will tell this to you, same as the Lighthouse does, for example. So it's a very good place to start if you just want to dive straight away and go for it. So this is something that will give you very, very great thing. And then, of course, web page test as well that I was mentioning. This is the test. This is the website for performance mostly. However, they put this experimental carbon control feature. So the carbon control feature, of course, just gives you the carbon control, but web page test itself gives you very, very extensive web performance report on even so basically the screenshot on the image from the hero component that I shared yesterday, how it can be decreased by 80%, that actually comes from the web page test. So they analyze all the images for you and tell you on which size it would be the best to have it and which format would be the most performant. So there's so many tools out there. We just have to use them.
I've decided, and people could watch this space for this, my own website, which is actually fairly simple. So I say this, pressing thumbs and crossing fingers, that I don't think it will require too much work, but it's a good personal thing to go through to see what can I do and show some practical stuff with that. So thank you so much. That was such a good conversation. I think we could have kept going forever.
For sure.
But thank you so much. And for you, if you want people to find out more about you, what would be the best place?
For me, well, I guess I just redesigned my website as well. It actually, according to website Carbon, it admits 0. So there is 0 images at this point in time.
I'm sure it's something.
I was the same. I was when I ran it through this, and I was like, come on, dude, it has to be at least 0.0001. So maybe it's about the rounding the numbers or something. But it officially, according to the website Carbon, it's 0 grams of carbon emitted. It's very, very light, of course. There you can check all of the InesAkrap.com. Well, it's easier, Ines.codes. You can just go to Ines.codes. That's the easier one. And for example, one of the huge optimizations I did there was with the font. Yeah. So I really wanted what I was saying yesterday, fonts are something to that it's a part of design. It's kind of part that kind of transmits the personality of the website and everything. And I kind of did want to keep the font. So I subset it to only the 9 letters of my name and my surname. Yeah, it's super over optimization, but it went from 40K to 4K, and it does what I needed to do. There is absolutely 0% of unused font because that's kind of.
I can already think of places on.
Yeah, cool.
Are unoptimized. And actually, I think converting the things to SVG.
Yeah, as well. So I'm making at this point in time as well deliberate choices to involve as few images as possible, not to use many decorative images and stuff like this, because I definitely want to spin off a bit of a blog. However, it does require work to write it. So I do have a platform now that kind of can handle the blogging, and I am definitely preparing what I was saying yesterday in the talk. I'm preparing one about these strategies, where to kind of go through. Also, Smashing Magazine has a checklist for sustainability. So that's very cool as well, resource. So you can just go through that and check this checklist. So this is also one too.
Very good resource for many years.
Yeah, exactly. It's again, when I started into the topic and I was like, there's actually, because I come from front end and then web performance, and I was like, this is kind of the actual goable, processable amount of resources about the topic, but as you start processing and going through them, the more keep coming. So I was like, no, not really. So I'm still not going to read it, most of these.
This is the thing. This is why I'm interested to dig more into the back end stuff, because the front end, there's a lot of resources out there. We just have to convince people to do it.
Yeah, exactly. The hardest part.
It's not complicated. And I kind of thinking through my head of things we could do, but then the strategies to alleviate it is where it's a bit more complex. But I think I'm starting to think of some ideas, actually. Yeah.
So that's the website where you can find all the links, my upcoming talks as well, and all the links to other social media. So if you want to find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, you can just go to Ines Codes and there's all the links.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was my interview with Ines. And just before we continue, just another quick reminder that this episode is brought to you by Zencastr. Quite literally, I use it for distributing my shows, adding metadata, sharing links, embedding on my website, and so much more. If you're interested in finding out more and getting 30% off a paid plan for the first month, then head on over to zencastr.com/pricing. Use my discount code ChinchillaSqueaks and enjoy. I want you all to have the same experience I do in creating your content, and it's time to tell your story. On the subject of stories, here's some from me from the past few weeks, I guess. So I have been at events again. Well, what's happened? A little bit of a significant change from me. I went back to do my own thing again. Just in the past week or so, I was working full time and trying to do these things on the side, but it just wasn't working, and I am now back to doing my own thing more. So there's going to be a lot more from me coming up. More videos, more regular podcasts, better produced podcasts, a new podcast actually, more to follow. I'm going to be working on some more fiction, some more non-fiction, some coding projects. A whole bunch of things will be coming from me in the very near future. Quite a lot. But in the meantime, before I get to that, I will just recap some of what I've been up to in the past few weeks. I am working on my new tech writing book with a co-writer with Pact Publishing. That's in progress. We're starting to submit the initial chapters. That will be coming soon. And on the subject of books, I am a technical editor for CSS In-Depth Edition 2. I made the video for Edition 1. But Keith Grant, the author, is working on a second edition. And yes, I'm doing a review of that. I'll put a link in the show notes to that book if you want to check it out. It's still in early access, but get ahead of the curve. Read some of the early chapters. It's pretty good, actually. I've been learning even in the chapters I've been reviewing, which is great. Also, there's a little bit of sponsor mentioned here in addition to the Zencastr sponsorship I just mentioned. It's also Setapp month. Setapp is a monthly subscription macOS application service. That was a very long-winded way of saying it. All you can eat apps for $9.99 a month. I've been using it for quite some time. They have kind of a writers competition this month, so I'm going to be putting out a whole bunch of content around it. I have one on Medium right now that is a free article for the month. And it details all the applications I use, and some of which I'm going to dig into in more detail over the coming months until just before the end of August. I will also put in the show notes a link there if you're interested in finding out more about Setapp and getting a free trial. It also helps me out with a little bit of revenue share there. So if you enjoy what I do, that's a great way for you to enjoy some applications for free, and then maybe for $9.99 a month. And then I get to share a little about that too. So much appreciated. I'll put that in the show notes. And finally, on my YouTube channel, I've had Document 360 sponsor some videos. Document 360 is a kind of documentation and API management platform. You can merge multiple sources of content into a pretty easy to use and change documentation portal. And if you head on over to YouTube, you will see the first of a few videos I've been doing for them. In addition to that, I recorded 2 episodes of In Bots We Trust with Killian over the weekend. I also recorded a game explainer video for someone. On the game front, the game I've been working on with a co-designer here, we play tested it at the Berlin Brettspielcon. That's coming on nicely. We may have a tabletop simulator version of that very soon. And there's a lot of other stuff in progress. I think I'll just leave it there because it's becoming a sea of links to remember. But there's a lot going on. As always, you can keep up with it all at chrischinchilla.com or head on over to the Chinchilla Squeaks Substack to get onto the newsletter. And I will keep you up to date with all of that over the coming weeks and months. A lot more interviews to come. And I'll also be adding details of a Patreon and other subscription options very soon if you want to support what I am doing, which will be greatly appreciated as I enter this new brave world of being an independent content creator. Whew. Scary times, exciting times. I look forward to sharing them all with you. I have been Chris Chinchilla. Thank you very much for listening and take care, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show. Find out more about me at chrischinchilla.com, where you can find show notes, sign up for my newsletter, and find all of my writing, games, work, and video links. There's also details on how to get in touch with me. And if you want to get even closer to what I do, join my Discord server for behind-the-scenes discussions and helping me produce my shows and work.